Hi, I'm Stephen Vantassel. You're listening to Living the Wildlife, discussing all things related to vertebrate pest control as part of the Pest Geek Podcast family. This is the disclaimer for Wildlife Control Consultant and Pest Geek Podcast for the Living the Wildlife podcast. Always follow national, state, provincial, and local laws when using pesticides and or other control methods to manage pests. Wildlife Control Consultant, LLC, Pest Geek Podcast, Living the Wildlife Podcast, Stephen M. Vantassel, or their or his affiliates are not responsible for followers' use of the information provided here. Hi everyone, Stephen Vantassel here, Wildlife Control Consultant, bringing another episode of Living the Wildlife as part of the Pest Geek Podcast family. Glad to have you on board. I hope your week went well. I am going crazy. So I had my meeting with the EPA and did some other traveling in terms of my day job. And then I've got more traveling this week. So I'm getting close to my limit here, and I am behind. We're really glad to have you on board. Do take a few moments, if you would, to subscribe to the channel, ring the bell, and of course, give us a 5-star review. We'd be most grateful for that. You can reach out to me at wildlifecontrolconsultant@gmail.com, wildlifecontrolconsultant@gmail.com. Would love to hear from you. Thoughts, ideas for shows, yes, even criticisms, or perhaps you even want to be on the show. Definitely reach out. We'd love to hear. We think there's a lot of information out there that is not getting out to the right people. So if you're new to the show, understand we provide technical research-based information or experientially based information on all aspects of wildlife control or vertebrate pest management. So if you're looking for bugs, this is the wrong place. So we're dealing with animals that have a spine. So of course, today I have a guest that I'm very pleased to have. Dave Ciphers of Wildlife Services, not USDA Wildlife Services. The name of his company is Dave Ciphers Wildlife Services, and he is a bait maker. And he even told me I got some baits from him about 4 years ago, completely forgot. So what started this whole thing was I was raising a question about call lures, and his name was suggested to me about call lures. So we're going to talk about things related to baits. Of course, he has his own bait line, and he sells his baits if you're looking to buy them. We'll repeat this again later on in the show, but he goes through a distributors, basically Wildlife Control Supplies, Tomahawk Live Trap, and then Presley's Outdoors. It's 3 places where you can purchase traps. Of course, you can also purchase from him, but he's trying to do things mostly through dealers. But if you'd like to become a dealer, you can definitely get him. And I'll let that as a teaser, let you listen to the rest of the show. We'll deal with that at the end before I give you some contact information. Well, Mr. Ciphers, we're really glad to have you on board here and as a bait maker, because that's sort of the alchemy of wildlife control. At least that's what I call it, because everyone has their magic mix. And good to have someone with experience in terms of bait making on the show. Welcome to the Living the Wildlife podcast.
Thank you, Stephen, for having me. I appreciate it.
Well, what got you involved in wildlife control? And then more specifically, what got you involved in doing bait making?
Fur trapping. When I was a junior high age student, started trapping in a creek with a friend. And we weren't old enough to drive yet, so we would walk or ride our bikes. And then my mom would take me a little farther out in the country. And I've just been fascinated about wildlife ever since. I just always wanted to learn about wildlife is the big thing that drew me to trapping, my interest in wildlife. And I'm always trying to learn something new. I read every day about some kind of wildlife. I just want to keep learning.
Anything specific? Any specific resources that you like to use?
I use the internet a ton, just general searches on life history of animals. And the fur trapping kind of led me into the wildlife control work. So then, I thought I knew a lot about raccoons and beaver and mink. And then, all of a sudden you start trapping squirrels, and, I think I know a lot about squirrels, but then I would dig in do a little more research. So every time I'd get a different job, as I started, I would just I felt like learning the animal was extremely important to, what they're attracted to, habits, and just what would make them easier to catch.
So did you go into full-time wildlife control or did you do it
No,
part-time?
I worked. I was a meat cutter, journeyman meat cutter, and meat manager for 30 years,
Okay.
and then I that job is pretty hard on a body, so I
Yeah.
got into doing maintenance work and was promoted to director of environmental services in a big healthcare facility. So
Oh,
I did that for 19 years
oh my
while I
gosh.
was doing my wildlife work. So
Okay.
my wife would ride with me at night. She didn't want to go early in the morning, but so I'd trap before work, go to work, and then trap after work.
Oh my
And
goodness.
I
Okay. All
I
right.
retired. I retired from that a year ago in November. So
Okay.
and then everything kind of blew up for me. My wildlife work got busier, and my baits and lures took off. So I'm just as
Yeah.
busy as I ever
You're
was.
just as busy as ever, but hopefully you're enjoying it a little bit more.
I
Yeah.
am.
So how about bait making? Of course, you had to be interacting with baits and lures, doing your wildlife control work, and certainly with your fur trapping, absolutely. So talk about that evolution in your life and how you thought you had a better mousetrap, I guess is the only way to phrase it, right?
Yeah, it kind of came with I was when I was a meat cutter, I had a lot of sources of base product for baits and lures, blood, bone meal, all those different types of things, fats, liver, all kinds of ingredients to experiment with.
Mm,
Neighbor was a horse farmer, so I had horse hooves and just anything that I thought might be attractive to wildlife. I tried it, and some things I didn't try them enough. I gave up on them too quickly, and I had too many things going on in my life to really put a lot of effort into some of it. But then beaver trapping is something that I've always enjoyed, and I started experimenting with beaver lure. And as I dug a little deeper into that, I combined my some of my ingredients for the coyote and predator lures with some of the beaver lures, and I felt like I stumbled on a really attractive ingredient to include in those beaver lures. And I don't think they can. They just seem like they can't resist it. I have
wow.
a big video series of two beaver coming into a location where I set up a camera, and they came in 2 nights. They visited that site 112 times, and I did
Oh
not
my
have any
gosh.
traps there. So, so that was neat to see. And then I relured it and put. Uh, it was just amazing. I just kept getting them to come back, and I ended up. I had to trap them for the gentleman eventually,
All
and
right.
so I experimented with cage traps and caught the first one in a cage, but I couldn't get the second one, so ended up snaring that one. And
Mm.
that's been a few years ago now, but just I just love using the cameras to experiment with. Right now, I'm going away from home, but I have 8 cameras out on baits and lures that I'm still experimenting with. So
Yeah, so
every morning I wake up and I can see what's going on out
oh,
there.
so you even have it tell you have it you hooked up to
Cellular,
the internet cellular. Oh, okay. So you're
it is
really going
really
modern
nice.
here. So you are keeping really up to date. So what is the process of your testing a bait? I don't want to certainly you have you know special materials that we don't want to give away your industrial secrets here, but in terms of what's the process you use to test a bait? Uh,
Well, I like to test the base products. Say for like beaver.
mhm.
Generally, a beaver lure is going to have castor in it, and then they may have the oil sac or may not have, and then adding and taking away ingredients until you have something that seems really attractive. And sometimes you can go for years and years and years and have something pretty good, but then all of a sudden, boom, you hit that magic spot where that's the recipe you don't change when you get there. You just
Yeah.
leave it alone. It's
But
tough.
how do you test that though? Is it you put it
Oh,
out into the field and then you have cameras on them? What's your replication? What's the product? Do you use a circle? I mean, obviously with cameras you don't need to look for tracks anymore, but are you putting it in a hole? Are you leaving it on a stick? Or
yeah,
how is your testing
originally,
process?
yeah, I went to the first fur taker college in
Mhm.
Kennedy Park, Colorado in 1980. And Major Boddicker was the head man, program manager there for Colorado State University. and they were doing the circle testing, like a 3 foot sifted circle at that time.
Mhm.
So that's basically what I started out with years ago. Then I gravitated towards the cellular cameras where I had to pull the disc out and look at them.
Yeah.
Well, a lot of times that information was starting to get old by the time I would look at that. And so what's really revolutionized it just in the last 5 years or so are the cellular cameras. You get instant feedback. So one of the things, if you test in several lures at a time, it's hard to believe that you would forget what you put down, but
Mhm.
unless you write it down,
Yeah.
it's very hard to remember, especially
Yeah.
doing a bunch.
Documentation's critical. Are you using photos or video?
I'm using photo and video, and you've probably heard of Mark Zager from New York. That's a coyote trapper.
Okay.
He kind of pioneered the pipe dream set, and so he gave me some ideas with that pipe. So I'm actually using the pipes for my testing for coyote lures now. So I can test several lures at the same time with one camera, just
Mm.
by the reaction to the three pipes I have in a row, and I've written down what's in each one. So and then if I get one that's hitting better than the others, then I can single that out and test it by itself and not have anything else involved with it. Because you never know where one might have drawn them in and another one takes over. So
Yeah.
it's kind of breaking it down. And so many times I have ingredients or a recipe that I think is really going to be good. I just know it's going to be good, and it flops. It's terrible. And I've learned to make it in small batches now
Yeah. You're
because
right.
I've had to
Yeah.
throw 5 gallon buckets away.
Sure. Well, without a doubt. And when do you, so when you're evaluating your video, what are you looking for in the animal behavior to tell you that this is something that looks promising, uh, versus, what's the animal doing? What are you looking for in that animal?
With coyotes, I prefer a digging response,
Okay.
because I think that's going to keep them in a set longer. And but you also have a lot of rolling with coyotes, even on a very mild a bait as you could imagine. A coyote will roll on that eventually.
Yeah.
They want to wear it.
Yeah.
And I've got videos of two coyotes on their backs with their middle of their back just they're just doing a dance. I'll have to send you some of those.
That would be amazing.
And but a digging response for coyotes is what I'm really looking for. But if you have a bait or lure, and I would say that I can't speak for other lure and bait
Sure.
manufacturers, but,
Right.
but I would think most things out there are going to cause a coyote to roll eventually. I just believe if you put a camera on them, you'll see a coyote roll on almost everything that's made.
Yeah.
So if they really want to wear it, that means they really like it.
Okay.
So
Sure.
where sometimes people think that's a negative that a coyote would roll, but if he wants to wear it, that's going to attract him every single time. And I put out bait and lure on January 25th. I put a lure in a hole, and the other night I got a picture of a coyote rolling on that spot, I test spot. So that was
two
all the way
months.
till
Well, about a month.
almost a month.
Yeah. Well,
And
there was a research article that I saw that actually showed that coyotes seem to be more interact with baits more on day four and afterwards rather than immediately. There's something about they just seem to ignore something new. They just were like,
yeah,
um, and is that your experience as well?
I think so. Since I make bait and lure, I tend to use a lot of it
Sure.
uh, because it's not as expensive to me as someone else.
Right.
So I feel like sometimes when I overdo it, when I put a little bit more in than I need to, and specific baits and lures, a milder bait and lure, you can get away with using a little bit more. Or something that's got a little more attractiveness to it, you might want to cut it down a little bit. And then also the type of set. If you're trapping for coyotes with a foothold trap, uh, a step down dirt hole with the lure deep in the hole
Hmm.
will will cause an animal to try and dig or reach it first before he rolls on it. Where if it's right on the surface, like a flat type set or a post set, they're going to rub on it right away.
Right. So the so let's talk a little, now that you brought that up, let's talk a little about in terms of what you as a bait maker want, uh, how you want your trappers to use your baits. And let's talk in more abstract, general terms. Like you talked about a mild bait, they can get away with using more. And so what kind of volumes are we talking about here? I was taught that, you're using something, when you're using professional baits, you're using something the size of maybe your thumbnail that would cover your thumbnail. It's really kind of small. I mean, in America, we tend to we scoop it, right?
Yeah.
But what is your thoughts on, how much volume are we talking about here?
I usually take a weed stem, uh, like a goldenrod stem or something like that, and have several of those broken off in my lure bait uh, carrier that I carry, and I'm just dipping that in and putting it in the hole.
That's for a liquid lure?
Yeah. Well, when I make lures, I don't want anything real with a high viscosity. I want a
Okay.
medium type viscosity.
All right. So it's got
So,
some
uh,
chunks to it.
yeah, it's got some chunks and some thickness to it, so it doesn't
Okay.
evaporate real quickly.
Okay.
And it will actually, the base that I make it out of, humidity and rain will actually tend to continually refreshen it. It slowly dissolves. I feel like it's water activated, but yet it'll hold the scent even in dry weather also.
Right. Yeah, because there's enough internal moisture to keep it going.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, do you have any paste baits, or or all of yours sort of that a thicker viscosity type bait that uh, a dipping stick would work with?
Yeah, like something I'm thinking of right away is a squirrel. I have a liquid bait that's a semi-gel that'll stay right on the pan of the trap, and
Okay.
a person could put some type of bait, sunflower seeds or corn, will stick to that. Then I also have a paste bait for squirrels that's a thicker consistency, like thicker than pudding,
Hmm.
that type of, and that's another product that you can stick the bait right to it. Then
What are the
for
names of those? What are the names of those squirrel products?
the hickory walnut is my liquid. I don't have my list in front of me because I'm not
Sure.
home.
Yeah.
And then I just call the paste squirrel paste.
Squirrel paste. Okay. And are there differences when you would use those particular baits? Is there a difference when you would use a paste versus the more liquidy version, or is it just personal preference?
For personal preference, I have people that like both, and
Okay.
the liquid is easier to use because you don't have to dip into the jar. You just squeeze a bottle and you can
Oh,
drip it on. So it's a
okay.
little more convenient. And some guys, really like that one, and other ones like the paste. And I use the paste a lot. I trap quite a few voles back home in
Oh,
Illinois, and it works really well on a vole trap with a one single sunflower stuck into it.
okay.
Sunflower seed or a piece of corn, kernel of corn.
Kernel of corn. And so you're really, it sounds to me like you're all using a lot of combinations. So you're using not just the lure, you're using a visual attractant as well with the seed, whether it be a sunflower seed or whether it be a kernel of corn.
Yes.
Is that's an important concept in terms of that attractiveness?
Yeah, and that goes to everything from coyotes to mice. I feel like having an odor and a visual. And one of the most important things that's not talked about a lot is blocking. I use blocking for every single animal I trap. So
Explain what that is then.
on a raccoon trap, it might be you have the corner of a house, an inside corner. So if you set your trap on that inside corner, you've taken away the one wall takes 180 degrees away from him, and another wall takes another portion of that away. So
Right.
it reduces his area to work the bait from the backside.
Gotcha. Okay.
And then when I bait, I'm using a visual attractor in the trap, like for a raccoon, possum, skunk. One visual attractor that works really well is a PVC pipe. Uh, I like the elbow fittings, about a 1 inch inside diameter, and I'm hanging it from a wire, and I can put a paste bait or a liquid bait in that. And then I'm also using a trailing scent on the outside of the trap. A lot of times for raccoons, I'm wiring the bait to the bottom of the trap. Rainy weather, I might use a plastic baggie, and I'll put a paste bait or a liquid bait in that baggie and wire it right to the bottom. And then I also have hanging bait in the trap. And then there's no other bait before the outside of the trap. I don't have them snack on their way coming in.
Okay.
I want them to eat something outside the trap and then head right in. I don't want them stopping part way. The only time I ever do that is when I have young raccoons, juvenile raccoons, and then I want them to stop partway in because other ones will crowd in and you can make a multiple catch on them at that time of year.
Okay. So that's yeah, you've hit me with a lot here. So the do you find that the do you find that the plastic is all chewed up by the raccoon once
Yeah,
they're in the cot?
yeah,
It's a little bit of a mess there.
we'll tear them, and it's just a small baggie.
Small
Uh,
baggie. Okay. And so do you cover your traps at all, or do you leave your traps wide open?
I cover my traps. I
You
like to have
cover
them
your
covered,
traps.
and then I know like I'm jumping around here a lot, but
Yeah.
as I hit it, I'm thinking about it.
Okay.
On a cage trap, well, sometimes one thing I wanted to talk about was trap shy animals.
Okay.
I
Well then
don't
go right
believe
ahead.
I don't believe there are as many trap shy animals as what people think there are. I
Okay.
believe I believe there are lucky animals, and I've got a lot of videos to prove that. A raccoon might come up to a trap, and he will dig under the trap, all around the trap, trying to get to that bait. It's not because he's so smart that he knows that's a trap, or he wouldn't be touching that trap. It's
Hmm.
because he's just lucky enough he hasn't found the opening, and he
Okay.
might walk right to the next trap and walk right in. So I forget what the question was we started with.
Well, I was interested in terms of like because different another bait manufacturer that I've interviewed, his philosophy is he uses very palatable sweet baits in
Yeah,
his formulations, and so he's a big proponent of the trail, so that
yes.
there's kind of snacking on the way in.
Well,
Where
what I
you were
do is,
very distinct on that, you're like for adults, it's you get one taste at the front, and you want the rest. You got to commit.
yeah, but I am using a trailing bait. I make a product called Kuntar, and
Okay.
it's an edible liquid bait, and I developed that when I was fur trapping with DP traps. And the reason I developed it was I was using baits that were freezing in my trap,
Ah,
and so this is freeze proof, but yet it's edible, and it works on raccoons, possums, and skunks. And so I just recently had a job at a college in Bloomington, Illinois, where I had to hide my traps, but I had to try and catch the animal.
right,
And
right.
so I was able to put the traps, like I mentioned, in a corner of a building or up against the wall to block down their area they can work the trap. But then I was also able to trail the scent out into the yard where they were digging the grubs out of the yard, and they would follow that scent right into the trap, hidden behind the lawn landscaping.
No kidding. So how far off their normal travel area were they being drawn?
Some of those about 30 yards, not real
30
not
yards.
real far, but I
Wow.
would make a little slight trail all the
Yeah.
way. And I've caught raccoons out of warehouses, like a food warehouse, uh, trailing across that warehouse very gently because you don't want to make a mess in a warehouse. So I just
Right,
a drop
right.
or two at a time, and be able to catch the raccoon the first night in a in a warehouse full of food.
So does it stain the floor?
No,
No?
it looks like it would stain. It's about the color of coffee, and it looks
Okay.
like it would stain, but it's water soluble,
Oh,
and
okay.
it'll rinse right off.
No
I've
kidding.
also caught them in a Walmart store, raccoon in the pet food aisle, eat coming down out of the out. It was staying up in a an I beam, a beam up above, not an I beam, but a hollow beam.
Right,
And,
right.
was able to catch that one, and I just put a cup of the coon tar. I hung a cup in the back of my trap because it had all kinds of other food. And
Oh,
I just
yeah.
so what I do in a place like that where I'm in a home or a garage or a building of some type, I'll take a thick piece of plastic and I'll put my bait on that piece of plastic inside the trap and out in front of the trap. So I'm not making a mess. I have they're going to tear the one up on the inside, but the one outside, they're just going to eat it off there. And then I just pick that up and throw it away. So I'm
Hmm.
not staying in there making a mess,
Okay.
that type of thing.
All right. So you're just using like a sandwich bag plastic is basically
Yeah,
what you're
that'll
using?
work. That'll
That'll
work.
work?
What
Okay.
I use, I'm kind of an old conservative. I
Right.
would take the bags of water softener bags that have that heavy plastic, heavy thicker mill,
Right. Okay.
and cut that up into squares and
Oh, and
stack
use
them.
that. Oh,
I
yeah.
do that.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. So I'm recycling a little bit.
Sure, absolutely. And then one on the outside. I'm just taking some notes here. So that's yours. So if you're dealing with an animal that is more, well, if it's not true, we'll just call them lucky for to use your
Yeah.
language here. Let's say someone's going to a house and they're like, well, yeah, we need you, we're hiring you because we tried to catch them and we couldn't catch them. So now we're dealing with an animal that's had maybe it was trapped and escaped, or maybe it got lucky, whatever the case may be. So what would be if I gave you that scenario, we're dealing with a single family home, they have, maybe an eighth of an acre, and they have a raccoon that is depredating, let's say, in their trash cans, and they don't want to do anything to put him in a shed or anything. They just want the raccoon gone. Okay. So they've tried trapping it before, they've failed for whatever reason. What would be your mode of operation in terms of trying to catch this animal that may be a little educated?
I set heavy. I If I have one animal, I'm probably setting four traps.
Okay.
I don't want to mess around. Because if he gets lucky three times, he might not get lucky the fourth.
Okay.
Uh, the other thing I would do is if I like when I was in the food warehouse, I used a tube type trap instead of a cage trap
Change
because it
change the
was at
look.
it was at the edge of town, and I just thought it could possibly be a cage, a trap shy animal that might have been released out there. It wasn't typical raccoon habitat,
Okay.
which I don't know anymore. It seems like they're everywhere. So,
They
you
are
know,
quite adaptive. They're quite an adaptable animal, to be sure.
they're incredible. It's unbelievable. I tell people when you see a guy on a TV show or a movie and he's hanging onto an airplane with one arm, a human couldn't do that, but a raccoon could. They're amazing.
They are a remarkable animal. And so then would there be any bait combinations that you would use? Would you make it a purpose to put a different bait lure combination in the four traps, or would you just go 50-50? Or what would
I've
be your
experimented with all kinds of stuff. I have a paste bait that I make that I don't even have on the market yet that I use some, but about 95% of the time I use my coon tar with some type of kibble like a dry dog food just to soak it up
okay?
and give them a couple pieces out front and that coon tar on the kibble in the trap and I trail it away. Just give it a little drizzle. So it doesn't take a lot.
Right.
And in a DP trap, also a marshmallow.
Okay.
Uh,
Eye
marshmallows.
candy.
Yes, and the reason I came up with that PVC pipe was I don't want everybody to think it's easy to catch an animal with something they could just use out of their cupboard.
Right.
So I'll stick that marshmallow down in that PVC pipe, and then when you put a liquid bait like my Kuntar or another product, you can put it right into that pipe and it holds it there and it's a real white. They're white, so they're very visual, and it just seems like it kind of sometimes they don't even eat the bait out in front of the trap. They go right into the hanging bait, and it's right there, right in front of it. They go right past it.
And you're using a 1 inch pipe.
Yeah, I think it's about 1 inch,
Okay.
1 inch, and I just run a wire through it and hang it in the trap.
Oh, so you have it horizontal? Or do you have it vertical?
I'm just hanging. I wire the pipe up and then I put a loop on it. And I kind of tighten that loop so when I push it up, it's almost like a paper clip where it hooks
Ah,
on, and
okay.
it's not easily taken off.
Oh, no kidding. Okay.
But I found I put the bait under the trap a lot. If you put the bait under the trap, you also need to stake the trap down so the raccoon doesn't move the trap.
Yeah, under
So I
trap.
use like a 1/4 inch rod.
Stake trap down. Okay.
Now another way a person can do it is toss 2 or 3 marshmallows in the back of the trap and use your 1/4 inch rod back behind the treadle and spear it through those marshmallows. Get them all speared on there and shove it down about 10 inches and then pull it up about 4, and it raises that visual bait right up at eye
Oh,
level
that's
with the
clever.
raccoon.
Yeah, I like that.
I had some Wiccan camp traps, I believe, that
Yep.
have a open treadle and a marshmallow. If you squeeze it a little bit, it'll fit right between those bars. And that's what got me starting to put it on the rod. And then I kind of evolved into hanging it on the wire. So
Yeah, those Wiccan camp traps were like almost indestructible. They were just amazing.
yeah, they're a great trap. Yeah, they're
They
a
were
great
made.
trap.
I liked them. They were just
Yeah.
like that
One,
takes
one
me
trap
back,
I
boy.
one trap I use a lot is the Tomahawk professional series with the
Yeah.
rear door. I really
Okay.
think uh, whatever brand, I think the rear door is worth the extra money.
I would totally agree with you. I think I'm getting too old. I was tired of using, I was always using like a trapper's trowel to try to get the bait back there. It just drove me. And I'm just like,
Rear
it's
door just makes it so easy. And
getting
and
old.
another thing, well, a lot of times, yeah, what a lot of times we're working in a neighborhood or on a campus or something, and they really don't want people to know they're trapping animals. So a lot of this, I can deploy my bait at home. I can have everything ready and have that trap baited right on the tailgate of the truck. So when I pull up to that residence or that business, I can deploy it very quickly. And I'm in and out of there. And I try and look like I'm a worker that's supposed to be there. They don't even question it most of the time.
Yeah, interesting. A pre-baiting the trap for rapid deployment. I like that concept. I'd like to transition a little bit to call lures, which is what I put something out online and was asking the question, call lures for I've always understood call lures to be really related to canines and predators. And they're like, oh no, you can use call lures for vegetarians, like squirrels or woodchucks or whatever. And so, what are your thoughts on that? Because your name was suggested that I speak to you about this. So, bring me up to speed here.
Well, like lures, usually classified like gland lures, curiosity lure, long distance call lure. But if you take a gland lure and it's a straight animal gland, just from say an otter, and you have an otter gland, that otter gland lure does not have a lot of smell. It smells like an otter, and if you had an otter in the room with you, you may not even smell it.
Right.
But if you had a good otter call lure with other ingredients, you would smell that lure. So it has a little more longer reaching. Now, it could also be called a curiosity. I think the names are kind of confusing.
Okay.
I like to call certain lures, I have call lures because, like my Iroquois beaver call, it it actually will call a beaver from quite a distance. Uh, I found out after years of thinking I had to find the den when beaver were in a lake, that I would try to find the den and set up the den with conibears or set close to that. Now I find out I can get my truck to the closest spot and use the wind and put that beaver call lure on a set, and
Mm,
that will bring those beaver to me instead of me having to go try to find them.
right.
And they will mark that over. You will know if you have beaver left or not. If and you go by the age class also. You start catching a certain age class of beaver, and you can kind of know what the colony status is of that colony. So I'm using the two together to determine when I'm finished there. But it's always, if they don't mark over that lure, they are not there. They mark it over. If they smell it, they will mark it over. It's our job as trappers to have the proper blocking. Again, I'm using blocking in the way a beaver and otter can be blocked very heavily. They don't get shy to that.
Right.
Um,
They're used
Uh,
to obstructions all the time in the
they're
water,
used
so
to it.
they have to work around it. Uh, so the call lure. So in terms of if we have, let's just use something like peanut butter, right? So if I have peanut butter and that has a certain draw,
Yes, yes,
how much farther should a call lure be able to, if I was to make it a peanut butter call lure,
yeah.
how much farther should it reach than what you get out of the jar? If I
I
can
would
use
think,
that
I would
analogy.
think, I would think using other nut oils and some ingredients that will boost the call, probably double the distance, maybe.
Okay. So the call
Yeah,
lure should double the difference. So if the peanut butter's drawing 10 feet, the call, those additional ingredients that you're using should go to 20, all things being equal, right?
yeah, I
All
think
the
so.
environmental conditions being
And,
equal.
and different animals, like I would say, coyote, red fox, anything in the fox family, canines, beaver are more easily drawn with a call lure.
Yeah,
Uh, the mesopredators would probably not be drawn as far
right.
because that's not their mode of hunting. They're more,
Sure.
and for beaver, they're not hunting, but they're seeking out those food sources. And you know, a good beaver lure is going to have natural lure odor of the beaver, plus food ingredients, plus other attractants.
Yeah.
And
We have that territorial component as well that you can excite. So, so with raccoons, they're going to be, doing some sight hunting, and obviously they're going to get some odor action if they can get close enough to it, I guess.
yeah, and that on those animals, I'm using the trailing scent more than the call lure. So the trailing scent's kind of taking the place of the call lure, I guess.
Gotcha.
You know,
Okay.
it's kind of bringing them in from a farther distance. Where with the coyote and the beaver, I'm kind of using the scent on the wind to
Right.
draw them in instead of a trailing
Okay.
scent.
So describe the proper use of your trailing scent, because you called it, what did you call it here? Your raccoon tar, right?
Coontar, yeah.
Coon tar. Okay, so the coon tar, what's the proper use of a coon tar in someone's backyard if you wanted to use that as a trailing lure? How many drops are you using?
Yeah, since I make it, I use more than I need to probably, but
Yeah, but this is you're trying
probably
to
a
teach your
drop.
audience. So if you want to,
Yeah,
obviously we want you to use more, folks. So he's got to
yeah.
pay. He's got to
I
pay for the
say
grandkids here.
I'd say a drop every 2 feet or 3 feet, something like that, coming
Okay.
across. And I actually, you know, just being out doing this type of thing, I remember one skunk job that I had that I put traps up against the house,
Yeah.
and I actually trailed a scent from a. There was a little trail running along the back of the yard, but the lady was having off there, so I just trailed that right from that back uh, trail to the trap, to the front of the trap. And I think I caught a raccoon the first night, and then so I did it again. I
Yeah.
dripped it out again. The second night I had a lot of dew the next morning, and when I walked into the yard, I could see the animals uh,
Foot
walking right
track.
down my foot trail,
No kidding.
and there was a skunk in the trap. So that was kind of neat. He just followed it right to the trap.
So it's that strong. Only so for raccoon, what would be the ratio for a skunk? Again, every 2 to 3 feet, or would you
Yeah,
narrow it a little bit more?
I do about the same thing.
Okay.
And like you say, for skunks, you'd probably be, you know, if you can get it real thin, you could do a consistent trail, but
Right.
you know, it would use more product that way. But
Sure.
I go pretty thin,
Okay. So
and
that's
it'll
just
hold up.
amazing. And then you use the bait at the cage to help
Yeah, yeah, a little bait
finish the
there,
job.
the visual, and more of that coontar. They want to eat it. They'll eat it. Uh,
They'll eat it. Okay.
I've got videos, really neat animal behavior, raccoons coming into a bucket that I've got baited with that, and the big mature raccoon will come in, and they come in backwards. They will come up to the other raccoon backwards with their behind, and they will push them out of their way with their backside. I've got hundreds of videos of that. It's
Oh
really
my
neat to watch.
gosh. Oh my gosh. That's amazing.
And they'll growl and bark, and then finally the one will move away, and then that one will feed for a while, and another one will come in and move that one out of the same way.
So do you think that baits are regional? Do you think that there are baits that are more regionally attractive to animals? Or do you think that a raccoon in the middle of the country is it going to be attracted by the same thing that a Massachusetts or California raccoon is going to be attracted to? Have you noticed
Uh,
any regionality or
I've had
habitat?
I've had people in California and Virginia and different parts of the country, Tennessee, catch raccoons like on the. I don't think raccoons would be much. Their diet in like around where I'm at in the fall, they're eating a lot of hackberries, a
Right.
lot of wild grapes, naturally corn. But I think with a raccoon, they're I think that would work anywhere. And coyotes, the curiosity, I think that generally not just my bait, but any bait should appeal pretty universally.
Pretty universally. Okay. And do you think that how many, in terms of a professional wildlife control operator, how many baits do you think he or she should have on hand?
Let's see, how many do I have?
Okay. Well, of course, more is better, right? But in terms
Yeah.
of actual reality, in terms of practical, do you think they should have sort of like the baits they're using 80, 90% of the time, and then maybe a couple for those jobs that just may be pulling their hair out? Or
Yes.
am I just overthinking this?
No, we all have those tough animals sometimes. It's amazing. I've got a good friend, Bobby Collins. We talk a lot, and we're both using cameras, so we're observing the behavior. And there are some raccoons that just don't want to cooperate.
Right.
So, but I don't really think changing the bait makes as big a difference as maybe changing the type of trap or the presentation. If you've got a bait, the baits I use, I can use them. I just feel extremely confident with them that I'll catch most of the animals with that bait. And if I'm having trouble catching them, sometimes I've had one go 15 or 20 days and then go in a trap that I baited in the beginning. But I
Yeah.
just make sure I leave it there. I don't take it away. I leave it there, and eventually they'll go in. They have to get used to it.
Sure. So in terms of, so that type of patience is going to be required. How about issues of odor on the trap? Like I've heard would you agree with the idea that if you catch a boar raccoon, let's say, in a cage trap, in that his odor's all in that trap, that a female may be more hesitant to walk into that trap, should be thinking of cleaning it, or does it not matter in your opinion?
I used to be kind of an odor freak,
Yeah.
where I would wear if I touched a canine trap, I would think you'd have to dye and wax it again.
Right, right,
And
right.
I've come full circle to realize that that's not quite as important. More the bedding of the trap, even a cage trap needs to be bedded solidly.
Hmm.
I, what was your original question?
Well, the question was, if how much does the odor on a trap, if you catch a
Oh yeah,
boar
yeah.
raccoon, is it less likely to catch a female raccoon following a boar raccoon?
Today, if you'd asked me that 10 years ago, I'd say yes.
Okay.
Today, I don't believe it's as important as some people think it is.
Ah,
And
okay.
even I hear a lot of people say that you can't catch a groundhog in a trap that a raccoon's been caught in. You hear that. And I
Okay.
believe a lot of things are just continuously repeated by trappers. Uh,
Yeah.
it's keep sharing. And some people, especially on social media, they
Yeah.
they will post something that they really have no background on. They've just read it somewhere else. So I think a lot of myths and wives' tales. I've caught groundhogs in traps that catch raccoons, and I wouldn't be afraid to set it. But some people firmly believe that you will never catch one in that trap. But
Okay.
I've also caught raccoons and groundhogs coming out of the same hole in positive sets, that
Wow.
they were both in the same hole.
No
So
kidding.
they're obviously not too afraid of each other.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
I think
sometimes I think those wives' tales are passed down.
so. Do you think that the advent of trail cameras, particularly now that we have video, it's not just simply taking a snapshot, and also that immediate feedback, that that some of these mythologies are going to be eliminated. I mean, I think certainly the odor one is for canines has probably been eliminated now. I mean,
Yeah,
because if they're afraid of human odor, they wouldn't be there in the first place.
yeah, yeah.
They
Well,
know you're there. It's just a question of, how we're just not patient enough, I think, for coyotes typically. Isn't that really the issue?
yes,
Yeah,
probably. And I did a presentation at the Wildlife Expo in Houston, and I shared videos. I had probably 30 videos in that presentation of animals working traps. And I've got one where a raccoon comes in and he digs under the trap to gets the bait out and works it, and he looks like he's smart. And then the very next video, he walks around to the front and he walks in the next trap and gets caught instantly.
yeah.
So, had I not seen the video, I would think I still had a smart raccoon out there that dug under that one, and I caught the dumb one right away. Also, sometimes you'll have three raccoons visit a set of traps and not go in, and then a possum walks up and walks right in and gets caught. Now, if you didn't have the camera there, you wouldn't know
You
that.
wouldn't know that, right?
And so,
Yeah,
one thing I love using the cameras for is I know what I have to catch, and after I've made several catches, I know what's still there and whether we need to catch that animal or not. Sometimes we don't need to catch them all. We just need to reduce our numbers or
sure,
catch specific ones.
sure. So since you're using trail cameras it's such an important role in your business. Do you have a particular brand that you like the best in terms of your experience? Clearly, you've done a lot of work with trail cameras here. Do you have a particular
Yeah,
brand?
my friend Bobby told me about Tacticam and
Tacticam.
Tacticam, Reveal X, Tacticam, Reveal X, and a Reveal X Pro. The X is a red glow camera, and the X Pro is a no glow
Blackout.
camera. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
okay.
blacked out.
Blackout.
So I really am kind of going to those completely. Now, the other nice feature about those, they have GPS tracking. If someone would take your trap,
Yep.
um, they'll
Or
have,
take your camera.
or yeah, the camera. I mean,
Yep.
take the camera. You would be able to maybe take that to the authorities and have that camera found. If
Gotcha.
you have the address, you could show it to them where it's at.
Okay. And
So,
is the monthly cost? What's it cost to?
Uh, monthly cost is around $9 a month per camera.
Oh, that's not too bad.
Not
Okay.
too bad.
Nine
You know,
dollars
when
a
you're
month.
running a business and doing it, and I'm using them for three purposes myself. I'm a deer hunter, so I'll watch
Yep.
deer, but
Right.
I also use it in my trapping business, in my wildlife control business, and I'm
Right.
also using it for testing my lures. So I'm using them year round all the time.
Sure. Yeah. And is there a maximum upload volume? I mean, you're using low
Uh,
res or high res?
they're you get low resolution pictures sent to your phone, which
Yep.
I mean they're still pretty good.
Right.
But
Yeah.
then you can another plan is $9 a month for as many cameras as you want. You can have an on-demand photo sent to you, and you can request high definition videos or high definition pictures.
Wow.
So now, if you use that, then you're going to use more battery in your camera.
Right. Right.
And I'm also using the lithium ion replacement rechargeable battery pack. So it replaces the whole battery cartridge, and you just slide that pack in. And they're nice because you can charge those in the truck even,
Yep.
or I have a couple charged up all the time, and I can just switch those out. So I might even get partway through a job, switch those out, and I'm not viewing a lot of videos on my computer or my phone. I'm usually taking the videos and looking at them off the card,
Off the
just
card.
because I can do
Yeah.
it pretty quickly and do them all rather than one individually at a time.
Yeah. In your the cameras that you're how long are your videos? How long can you do your videos? Is it five
Uh,
seconds,
I
10
think they
seconds? What
go.
do you
I think they go up to 30 seconds is what
30
I'm.
seconds.
Yeah,
Okay.
and I have them most of them pretty long.
Yeah. And do you
And
have a
I'm not positive, but it might be the X Pro that has the better the on-demand video. I don't know if you can do that with the X or not. I'm not positive.
sure. Well, there's always once we're done with this, they're probably going to come out with the
Yeah,
X squared Pro for all we know,
yeah,
right? And so if
yeah,
everything's always getting bigger
yeah,
bandwidth, better resolution. Um, is there sound? Does it record sound as well, or
yeah,
is it
yeah.
just it does record
You
sound?
can hear sound. Yeah.
Oh, no kidding. Okay. What
So
is the
I'm not
biggest?
really listening a lot, and I have trouble hearing. So even if I have sound, I may not be picking it up all the time.
What is the biggest myth that you think people have about baits? That you think we should just stick a fork in it and kill it right now?
Oh, I don't know. I'm not sure
All
about
right.
that.
Well,
Caught me off guard on that
then
one.
let's flip the question. Then I've put you on the spot there. Uh, what would be the one thing about baits you wished every wildlife control operator understood that you would want to make the best use of the whatever bait they're using? What do you want them to do with a bait to get the maximum out of it?
Okay, if they have a bait and lure that they're already using and they have confidence in, they would probably use that in their number one set they made. And when you look at an area, whether you're trapping raccoons in a yard or coyotes out in the open, that one spot's going to catch your eye. That probably is the best location. So that has an advantage of being the best location right away. And then you might pick a second location, a third or a fourth. You get down to the fourth one. If that's where you're testing a new product, you may not catch anything there.
Right. Yeah.
And it may not have anything to do with the bait or lure. It might just be the location.
So be
So
careful of your selection bias.
yeah, yep,
Yep.
selection bias. That's a
Yep.
good term.
So
Yeah,
where
and
yeah, it's sort of like selection bias is an idea that, it's where you're if you're trying to get results, your selection is already predetermined the results you're getting for. For example, if you're doing a survey for finding out how many criminals are in the population and you start your survey at a prison, you're obviously going to have a pretty high percentage
yeah,
because it's not a random sample. So you got to
right,
randomize.
right.
So yeah, so I think that's an important point. So if you're testing a bait on your own, even casually, make sure you rotate
Yeah,
which
and
bait you're
even
using. So the first set is probably your best location. You're probably right because location matters.
yeah, yeah, and
Locate overcome location. Yeah,
with um, not giving up on a lure or bait too quickly. Uh, I would in using a trail camera, and I don't know how much difference animals react to baits and lures from summer to winter. You hear a lot of people talk about that. Uh,
yeah,
with For raccoons and beaver, I feel like my baits and lures are attractive year round, as would any good one be. Now
yeah,
coyotes could vary a little bit, I think, but like beaver are attracted to castor territorial scent all year round. They use that as a territorial marker year round. It's not something I hear. That's a myth I hear, that you can't catch a beaver on a castor based lure in the summertime. That is definitely a myth.
yeah. I would agree. I would agree with that. Um, because I did that when I was doing wildlife control work in Massachusetts. So I overused castor. I should have started with food lures and I was using castor straight off. I shouldn't have done that. But yeah, they could certainly catch
I think
castor.
a blend is the best, a mixture of territorial and the food ingredients. And uh, I don't think a beaver can leave them alone if it's made right.
Yeah, sure. And so the terms of that biggest fact they should recognize, one, don't give up on a bait or lure too soon. Give it a good testing and then watch out for that selection bias, that you're not just putting your favorite bait in the best sets if you're testing out something new. Because I do think we do need in the industry better research, because if we don't do it, it's not going to get done by the academics because there's
Yeah,
no money in it.
yeah,
We've got to get to a place where some of these questions are getting getting answered, and where we can start developing more, I think, precision within our industry than what we already have. Uh, and I do still see that there's a tremendous amount of resistance to that. It just seems like there's an anti-academic strain within the industry that's uh, like, we don't need to do that. I've got my experience, and they haven't thoughtfully reflected about their, selection bias and recency bias about we always remember what occurred recently, or a monumental event we remember better than the averages that we have over, because the record keeping is how many guys are doing record keeping, right?
Yeah.
It's a
Even
real
my own bias when I have a lure or bait that I want to test and I put it out there and it's not successful, I just don't want to believe it.
right.
I want the
Yeah,
results to be different.
yeah,
And
right.
you have to believe the results.
Do you go back and give it another go and seeing, like, maybe it was weather, maybe it was just, when you're doing your testing, are you taking into account weather conditions? Do you correlate that with weather conditions, seasonality? How often, how many different sites did you test it at? Or,
Yeah, well, I don't do it like as much as I should. But
yeah.
then I also lose coyotes due to people hunting and trapping. So,
Yes, that's
you know,
right.
couple
Sometimes the target animal got whacked, right?
couple months ago, I had three coyotes regularly hit my bait station, and then
Yeah,
I a friend of mine that hunted down the road a couple miles. Now there's only one showing
there was
up,
only one visiting.
so I lost
Well,
my
clearly that's a
participant.
sign that the bait failed, wasn't it?
Yeah, so that'll happen. But what I found is if testing individual ingredients
Yeah,
and then combining them to make the most out of them, and it takes a long time to do that.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
Now with the cellular cameras, I feel like I can speed that up quite a bit more
Okay.
because I'm getting data quicker instead of, you get busy with life and you don't pull that card. And now I can look at it daily and it doesn't pile up on me.
Yeah.
So,
Where do you see the bait industry going? Do you see what are some areas you think the bait industry should go? Uh, where do you, like, put on your crystal ball? Where do you think you're going? If you can't think, if you don't want to talk about the industry as a whole, where are you going with your bait manufacturing? What's
uh,
your next frontier?
I can talk more about mine. When a person produces commercial bait, you have to produce it economically and to make a
Right.
profit.
Yeah.
And I'm at a point in my life where I don't have to make a lot of money doing this. I really enjoy helping trappers, and I love it when people send me a picture of something they caught.
Yeah.
So I feel like before I thin something down or water it down to produce more of it, I'm going to keep it the same. If I have to raise the price, I'm going to raise the price.
Right. Yeah.
And so I think having a thick, heavy lure that's going to go a long ways. I really truly believe most of my lure, you could water it down 50% and still be extremely successful with it. So, and you can use smaller amounts. I just put it pretty thick and I don't want to thin it down. So, or try to put filler into it to make it go farther. That's just my personal take on it.
Mm. Do you think there's any need for uh, what are I don't see many vole baits out there, for instance. I don't mice, certainly there has, but I'm not sure how much research is done on, you know, deer mice and white-footed mouse for baits. A lot of house mouse work, but I think that Peromyscus species are sort of not getting sufficient attention. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Uh, I I catch a lot of voles with baited traps and using my paste bait. It's just a nut based paste,
Yeah,
but I'm also using a solid bait too. A piece of grain or something like that on the trap and
sure.
covering them up, covering the vole traps. I've
You
listened
think
to your podcast on vole trapping. It's very good.
do you think there's ever a need for a trail bait for voles?
Well, they're kind of eating their own trail as they
They
go.
are. Yeah.
So I don't know if we would pull them very far. I think I'm setting really close to where they are. If you were uh, possibly if a neighbor had the main population and you wanted them to draw, if there was a obstruction you needed to draw them, you might be able to do that with a trail.
Yeah. I just think that the question is, are there any lures that would be for someone to even try with that?
I would think uh, anything that would work for a squirrel would probably work for a vole.
Okay.
They're going to eat those. They would eat any kind of grain, I think. They're eating roots, the grass roots.
Yeah.
So if a person could come up with something like like a carrot seed extract or something like that, may work for voles.
Do you think that there is do you have a a trailing lure for squirrels?
Just that my liquid squirrel uh, uh, hickory walnut squirrel lure.
Okay.
And they're not as sent. They they're very visual in the
Mm,
trapping world. I mean, I
yeah,
think they spot that, but I still like to use the lure. I think anytime I have a chance to increase the odds a little bit, I like to do it.
sure. Now,
Just a
does that
little.
work on reds and flying squirrels as well, beyond just grays and fox?
I have experience with grays and fox and chipmunks.
Oh, and
So
chipmunks. Okay.
other than that, I've never had a flying squirrel job where I'm at.
Ah, okay. Well, it'd be interesting to find out from the audience if anyone's used the hickory walnut
Yeah.
squirrel bait for flying squirrels or red squirrels. So that would be an interesting to find out how people had success with that. You can certainly reach out to us. So anything before we wrap up here, is there anything that we haven't talked about that you would like to talk about to the audience that you want them to know? Do you have any new baits coming out that that the audience may be interested in, or something you want to get
Well,
out there to the world?
one thing that I would want to talk about real quick would be raccoon eviction.
Yeah,
So
go
a
by all
lot of
means.
a lot of the raccoon eviction products, and I don't know what people have in there, so I can only tell you what I have in mind.
Yeah,
And I believe a lot of it's male raccoon urine, but
okay,
uh, raccoon gland, uh, is what is in mine.
okay.
And when I do a raccoon eviction, I'm doing an inspection and I'm trying to find all of any entry point on the property, on the house or the property. And then I want to conduct an inspection. If it's an attic, I want my presence to be there. I want them to know that something different or new is in their space, in their safe space. And then I do it a little bit differently. A lot of times it's recommended to throw a tennis ball with the
Right,
leaching fluid on it.
right.
I like to put it on the opening where the female is going through. I want her to physically get that on her body and have to clean it off.
Ah,
And then I'm using a recording of a raccoon fight. I don't know if you're familiar with Fox Pro callers, but I use a Fox Pro
hmm.
and I'm playing a raccoon fight at full volume. And I have really good success with doing that.
And what is how do your clients deal with that noise? I mean, are you having
Uh,
a timer so that it shuts off at like midnight or something?
no,
Or
I do it before I leave, and it's in
oh, okay.
late in the afternoon. And then some clients, I have them play it again at night. I just leave my call there for. I instruct them how to use it, and they'll do that. But
So just right on the living space, so it just point it toward the attic where the
yeah, and
raccoon is?
and
Huh.
I don't want to get into a long story, but I was attacked by a raccoon and bitten. I was in the house and I
Wow.
shouldn't have been. So my recommendation is put that call in there, get out of the house, and turn it on with the remote. Don't
Oh,
don't be in
okay.
the structure.
So, or if you're putting it in the attic, close the opening to the attic.
Yeah, and I don't even use the attic. I do
Don't
it
even
in
use
the house.
You do it
If
in
it's
the house. Okay.
in the house, I just do it right in the living room or the kitchen or wherever it's close where and they know they're there. They know it's there.
Right. Yeah, because it's strong enough to go through the
Yeah, it's
sheetrock or
been.
whatever.
I'm running it pretty loud, and there's been time where I didn't have it on my truck with me, and I tried coyote gland lure, and I thought, it'll work the same, but I didn't. I didn't have luck with it. I
Yeah.
and when you smell a raccoon gland, it has very little odor. I'm not aging those glands. I'm using it fresh. I don't want it to smell like it's a raccoon that's been dying. I want
Right.
it to smell
Right.
like a live raccoon. So I preserve those as fresh as I possibly can.
Okay. Wow, that is kind of some bonus information here, folks. So on the raccoon eviction fluid.
And right now, I'm away from home right now, and the only person that has that in stock right now is Presley's Outdoors on that information I gave you. They have
Oh,
two
okay.
ounce bottles. So if anybody
Yeah.
would want to get that for this season.
Sure enough, yeah. So, because your baits are supplied through Wildlife Control Supplies, Tomahawk Live Trap, and Presley's Outdoors, but
Yep.
only Presley Outdoors right now. Presley's, like Elvis Presley's,
Yep.
Presley's Outdoors has your eviction fluid in stock
Yep.
right now, and I guess everyone else must be out.
Yeah.
Okay,
Well, some of them don't carry it because they have their own product.
sure. Okay,
So,
right. Oh,
so
gotcha.
they didn't want
Yep.
to add one more on. So
Right, right.
that's understandable.
Sure, without a doubt. So that is an interesting issue. So if you're looking for a raccoon eviction fluid, just understand some states get a little squirrely with this. I know New York State doesn't allow raccoon eviction fluid. You have to have like a pesticide license, or they may even ban it completely. So make sure you follow your regs. It is unfortunately this sort of gray area in terms of what's a pesticide, what's not a pesticide. I'll leave that, folks, to your conscience and your state's interpretation of FIFRA. Okay, so but nevertheless, there is certainly a need for products at times when the raccoon young are not easily accessible and you want her to take them away without abandonment. Have you had much issues with abandonment with these techniques where she's leaving
I
one of her young behind?
I've never had that myself.
Okay.
I haven't had
All
that.
right.
But I'm an individual operator and doing a lot of this part time up until this
Yeah,
point. So I'm not doing the numbers that some people do.
sure.
So if you were
Sure.
doing, 10 times as many jobs, I might have more, it'd be just the numbers would
Yeah.
be.
Numbers numbers matters. There's always going to be the outlier, right? So
Yep.
that always can happen. Anything else that you wanted to add before we
Uh,
close, while you were
one
kind enough
thing,
to be here with us.
avoiding cats with a sweet bait. That's one of the reasons why with the mesopredators, I'm using a sweet bait. I'm
Right.
not wanting to use anything fish or fish oil. Uh, and I have lots of videos of cats on the outside of my traps, but not being captured.
Right.
I have one picture of two cats at my feet as I'm setting the traps up.
Yep.
And the next morning I had a raccoon in there, no
Yeah.
cat.
Yeah. So it is fascinating that cats just are really triggered by the fat
Yeah.
rather than the carbohydrates and the sugars. So it is a fascinating element. You hear stories of like, well, I tried this and I still caught a cat. Do you think that's just an issue sometimes of the curiosity? Like if you're covering your trap, sometimes they just want to explore the box
I think
rather
so.
than the food. Yeah, rather than the
Yeah,
food.
I think so. Hey,
Yeah,
you're going to catch some
sure.
anywhere. And I have a neighbor down the road that is a cattle farm, and I would bait it up with, even using dog food or something like that, and you would have cats get in those because there's so many cats.
Yeah.
And went to just the sweet bait only, and that avoided. You still catch one every once in a while, but it took care of most of them. They didn't.
Yeah, they're going to be curious. There may be an odor there that they're just trying to figure out what it is, and there's something new in their environment. Why not?
One
Yeah.
other thing I want to talk about real quick
Hmm.
was lure at a positive set. So thinking
Oh.
about a groundhog. We talked about groundhogs and the scent. I think Chris Lunn was the one that mentioned it on the
Hmm.
Facebook post.
Yeah.
Um, so what I like to do is I don't want the woodchuck is the groundhog lure that I make, and it's just like everything else for raccoons are attracted to anything, out of curiosity.
Right.
So I never put that inside the trap unless it's a baited set. But on a positive set, I put it right outside the entrance on the ground, right outside the entrance. Because a positive set, that trap can actually act just like a cone for bats. If you think about it, you're covering the hole with the trap. Where's the bat going to get back in, or where's the groundhog going to go in? He's going to go right into the corner of the trap where it meets the wall.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And so if you get that lure out front, you get him with his nose right out there in front, and then he can see right to the opening and go straight into the trap, go right
Right.
into his opening.
Yeah. So are you using two-door traps, or you're just with your
Yeah,
positive using two-door traps?
two
Okay.
door traps, a straight path through. And
Okay.
then the last note I had, use blocking in many forms. So even with the dirt hole set, the blocking is the straight edge that the hole's going into. The hole is
Okay.
a form. The hole
Yeah.
hole is a form of blocking. The sides of a step down dirt hole are blocking, and then you can either use pebbles or vertical sticks to guard your dog or guard part of the trap to eliminate a couple places that they can step. So I'm using blocking for everything from squirrels to raccoons to coyotes.
Right. Yeah, I think it's important to manipulate that animal's behavior to the extent practical and appropriate.
Yeah.
That's really what we sometimes we just don't take enough control of the
Yeah.
situation.
I was experimenting a little bit with beaver with cage traps,
Mhm.
and the beaver would try to get to that lure. Well, they'd come around the back of the trap, and they were as close to that lure as they could get. So they weren't going to leave it to go around to the front of the trap. They were
Right.
already within inches of it.
Yeah.
So I found that just by putting up some fencing
Yeah.
and blocking the entry so that they can never get behind the trap, using the terrain, and they could get behind it, but you're going to block it down. I'm using small hog panel fencing, that type of thing, even just a small piece in between two traps, and boy, that really increased my catch in my life in
Yeah.
my cage traps.
Right. Well, that's important. Blocking and just using baits appropriately. Was there anything more in your list that you wanted to be
I
sure we
think
talked
that
about before we leave?
I think that's all I had. The I did have something here about viscosity.
Hmm.
Uh, Viscosity of lures. You can go all the way from like water or alcohol being very thin with a higher evaporation rate, or you could go from oil to oil, which is thicker, or you can go to something as thick as like peanut butter or a heavy oil. And I like for my lures, I like them to be a medium viscosity where you have a good evaporation rate, but you have a slow release, an even release of lures.
Yeah.
And the term fixative in lure making is kind of misunderstood.
Okay.
Uh, a fixative, uh, the way it's used in the lure industry is that a fixative combines those lures, those ingredients into a certain smell and kind of captures it there. But
Hmm.
what a fixative is in the perfume industry is it controls the volatility. It equalizes the evaporation rate of those products.
Ah.
So you don't have one product evaporating quickly and another one evaporating slowly, and it kind of has that release all at the same time.
Ah, I gotcha.
So
I did not know that. I
that's what
always
I'm
thought it was
striving. That medium viscosity is what I'm striving for.
okay. Evaporated same rate. Interesting. Okay. Anything new in the horizon for your development that you think is going to come to market?
Uh, Nothing new. I'm going to try and maybe I do not have a website, so I need to do that
Yeah.
and keep plugging forward.
Okay, well, I think certainly I think that might help your sales, but if sometimes it may not be worth your while. You have some distributors you're working with, and sometimes it just frees you up to
Yeah.
put your energy into something else, but by all means. So, really appreciate your time. I promised our audience we would give the contact information for those of that looking that maybe you want to get into the bait selling business. Dave, Ciphers has is open for additional distributors for his product. You can reach him at D
Hey,
Ciphers.
let me correct you. It's the SCI. I don't know if
DSCI. Yep. Did I say something different?
I thought you said SI. You may have.
Oh, I'm not. I might. Yeah, I might have done that. DSCIFRES, and I'll put it in. I'll put it on the screen here so that people
Okay.
can see it. DSCIFRES, Ciphers at gmail.com, and we'll put it here on the screen for people as well. So if you're interested in becoming a distributor, don't just harass them with a lot of questions. No, if you're interested in being a distributor, you can reach out to him there. Well, thank you very much, Mr. Ciphers, for sharing some of your expertise and
Thank you.
experience on baits and doing some wildlife control. And don't hesitate to come back if you come up with something new and you want to come on the show. We'd love to have you
Thank you.
back again talking all things.
And I don't mind helping others. If somebody has a question about trapping, I know I
All
could
right,
open myself to a lot of emails, but I
sure.
really enjoy helping people. So
Okay. Well,
even if they're not buying my stuff,
be
I
thoughtful in your requests, and and maybe send them some money love there would be
okay.
helpful at times. So, all right. Well, you've been listening to Living the Wildlife as part of the Pest Geek Podcast family. We're really glad that you hung along with us here for this deep dive in all things related to baits. But if you have questions, comments, even criticisms, you can reach me at wildlifecontrolconsultant@gmail.com, wildlifecontrolconsultant@gmail.com. Would love to hear from you. Yes, even for the criticisms as well. Do take a few moments, if you would, to subscribe to the channel, ring the bell, and give us a 5-star review. You can also reach out to me through Rumble. So we publish the podcast on Rumble as well. Just go to Wildlife Control Consultant. You can see the podcast listed there. Well, this is Living the Wildlife. Why do we call it Living the Wildlife? Because we want you to live the wildlife, not be the wildlife. Take care, everybody.
Thank you, Stephen.